Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So we're back at the holiest of holy places, 22nd Avenue, Matchless Gifts.
Yes.
And we're reading Bhagavatam by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Canto 4, chapter 22, text 34. Om Namo
Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Those who strongly desire to cross the ocean of nescience must not associate with the modes of ignorance. Oh my goodness. For hedonistic activities are the greatest obstruction to realization of religious principles, economic development, regulated sense gratification, and at last liberation. Purport. The four principles of life allow one to live according to religious principles, to earn money according to one's position in society, to allow the senses to enjoy the sense objects according to regulations, and to progress along the path of liberation from this material attachment. As long as the body is there, it is not possible to become completely free from all these material interests. It is not, however, recommended that one act only for sense gratification and earn money for that purpose only, sacrificing all religious principles. At the present moment, human civilization does not care for religious principles. It is, however, greatly interested in economic development without religious principles. For instance, in a slaughterhouse, the butchers certainly get money easily, but such business is not based on religious principles. Similarly, there are many nightclubs for sense gratification and brothels for sex. Sex, of course, is allowed in married life, but prostitution is prohibited because all our activities are ultimately aimed at liberation, at freedom from the clutches of material existence. Similarly, although the government may license liquor shops, this does not mean that liquor shops should be open unrestrictedly and illicit liquor smuggled. Licensing is meant for restricting. No one has to take a license for sugar, wheat or milk because there is no need to restrict these things. In other words, it is advised that one not act in a way that will obstruct the regular process of advancement in spiritual life and liberation. The Vedic process of sense gratification is therefore planned in such a way that one can economically develop and enjoy sense gratification and yet ultimately attain liberation. Vedic civilization offers us all knowledge in the sastras, and if we live a regulated life under the direction of sastras and guru, all our material desires will be fulfilled. At the same time, we will be able to go forward to liberation. So what seems to be saying is that
Want to go back?
just leave it, please.
I did.
Oh dear.
You got something to say?
So what it's saying is that we have to be regulated in our sense gratification, and if there is a sort of like, don't do this, don't do that.
Okay, so now we've composed ourselves.
Okay, so the point is that we have to be regulated in our sense gratification. And the point I was going to make was that even when you're in a, I'll tentatively make this, it's not for any one particular person, but even when you're in, actually any ashram, I was thinking of someone who's in saffron, but it's any grihastha. I've seen that sometimes we may continue to do the motions of what it means to be a devotee and in the ashram, but subtly, you start to enjoy sense gratification, you know? And that spoils everything, actually. So Prabhupada's really stressing this point because, if you don't control the senses, and like what we were saying in the previous reading, we don't appreciate how strong Maya, the illusory energy, is. We really, really don't, you know, and she's kept us here for many millions of births. And to be fair, this, like we said, is again in previous readings, sitting here in 26th Avenue, we sit in front of our guru, you know, we sit in front of the deities or whatever. But within a second of just walking out the door or just turning to someone and talk, you're covered. You know, you can become covered. You don't have to be. And that's material energy. It's so powerful. It doesn't have to be on a gross level. Oh, someone put a big pile of money in front of me, but it was related to drugs, but I took it. Or there was like men or women that were trying to lure you. So the point I'm getting is that it's very important to constantly be looking at our day-to-day activities and lives, and to what extent we're allowing that enjoyment. And is it, you know, to some extent stuff is there, but are we allowing that river to really flow, widen, you know, flow, and then we wonder, why we don't get the result we want.
You mean like a river of sense gratification? It starts as like a trickle or a drop, and then it turns into a little stream, and then it turns into a river, right?
Yeah, and then you get, get pulled away by the current.
Yeah.
To be poetic.
Very. Yeah. Yeah, it reminds me of Kadamba Maharaj. He said a couple of things. One of the first lectures I ever heard him give in Soho, actually, it was probably like 2001 or something, maybe even 2000. And he was talking about, he said it's like a bit of bait, like a worm on a hook for a fish. And the fish kind of comes up and is looking at it, you know. And the fish can see that there's a worm, and he can see that there's a hook also. Sorry about that. Can see that there's a hook also, and he's thinking, but that worm looks really good. Maybe I can approach it like this underneath the hook, and I won't get the hook. And so he goes and he starts to nibble. And that's actually what fish do, and they nibble on the worm. But then up above, the rod is going like this, or there's a little thing, a floater, I forget what they're called, bobber or something, and that goes like that. And then the fisherman sees that, and he just goes, and he snags it. And then the hook goes in the fish's mouth, and then it's a fight. And that's what happens. It's like, you just reminded me that. It's like, we try to nibble. And he said it's like fire also. He said, you know, you start to play with fire, but fire has a purpose. So no problem if you use fire for its purpose. But if you start to play with fire, you're in the kitchen, you got a fire going, you take matches and you light them and you put them here and there, and you're just playing. Then next thing you know, you're getting burned up, and you realize, oh, I should have been a little bit more careful with the fire. So nice analogies, nice point about the river. I like that. Anything else? Okay. So we'll move on to text 35. Out of the four principles, namely religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation, liberation has to be taken very seriously. The other three are subject to destruction by the stringent law of nature, death. So that was a point I was thinking from that previous paragraph, and maybe probably will pick it up here, but generally, Srila Prabhupada is against dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. I won't say against it, but he preaches, right, that life is not meant just for dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. It's not like, but in a gradual, progressive sense, Vedic life is like that. First, let's become dharmic and use our dharma dharma should create wealth. Dharma, artha, then wealth ensues with some level of enjoyment, but at least it's coming from a dharmic means. And then that will ultimately lead to moksha, and Prabhupada explains in different places, because we desire moksha because we realize we can't really enjoy. So like that. Anyway, so Prabhupada says here, moksha or liberation has to be taken very seriously, even at the sacrifice of the other three items. As advised by Sutta Goswami in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, religious principles are not based on success in economic development. Because we are very attached to sense gratification, we go to God, to the temple, or churches for some economic reasons. Then again, economic development does not mean sense gratification. Everything should be adjusted in such a way that we attain liberation. Therefore, in this verse, liberation, moksha, is stressed. The other three items are material and therefore subject to destruction. Even if somehow we accumulate a great bank balance in this life and possess many material things, everything will be finished at death. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that death is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who ultimately takes away everything acquired by the materialistic person. Foolishly, we do not care for this. Foolishly, we are not afraid of death, nor do we consider that death will take away everything acquired by the process of dharma, artha, and kama. By dharma, or pious activities, we may be elevated to the heavenly planets. But this does not mean freedom from the clutches of birth, death, old age, and disease. The purport is that we can sacrifice our interests in trivargya, religious principles, economic development, and sense gratification, but we cannot sacrifice the cause of liberation. Regarding liberation, it is stated in Bhagavad Gita 4:9. Tyaktva deham punar janmam naiti. Liberation means that after giving up this body, one does not have to accept another material body. To the impersonalists, liberation means merging into the existence of impersonal Brahman. But factually, this is not moksha, because one has to again fall down into this material world from that impersonal position. One should therefore seek the shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and engage in his devotional service. That is real liberation. The conclusion is that we should not stress pious activities, economic development, and sense gratification, but should concern ourselves with approaching Lord Vishnu in his spiritual planets, of which the topmost is Goloka Vrindavan, where Lord Krishna lives. Therefore, this Krishna consciousness movement is the greatest gift for persons who are actually desiring liberation. Jai, what a powerful purport. So Prabhupada makes it very clear that since dharma, artha, and kama, religious activities and pious activities, wealth and sense gratification are of least importance. They may come, they may not come, but we have to focus on somehow preparing ourselves to go back home, back to Godhead. So some people are coming in now, so we'll finish here. And we'll speak to you all later. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Hare Hare.